Okay, so our first topic we're going to be talking about is how does one form an identity that remains true and authentic for him or herself? What are you guys' thoughts on this?
Well, I think I put down because in the book Stephen King said that he doesn't really listen to all the letters he gets from people who he doesn't know or that don't really care about who he is just reading his book. He doesn't really listen to what other people think. So I wrote down basically.
It's interesting. Anyone else have any
Mhm.
ideas?
What was the question?
You know the question, Ricky. Stop clicking your fidget cube. It's really just in the way.
Okay.
I don't actually know the question.
Okay.
The question is,
So-
how does one form an identity that remains true and authentic for him or herself? It's in the Discord. It's the paper that we have.
I mean, it really depends on the type of person you are, what you're going through. Like, you could be stuck in a bad spot and you have to fake something so you don't, like, feel sad. So I guess it depends on the person. Like anything.
It's an interesting thought.
That's so true, Ricky.
I feel like for authenticity, self-awareness is a big part of it.
Could you,
How does one become
elaborate?
So like, when you live with lots of self-awareness, decisions are easier to be made because you're free to choose things that move you closer to your values.
Okay.
Well, in a culture where we are bombarded with ideas and images of what we should be, I feel we really need to listen to the people around us more and focus more on what, the positive side of your life. The media is always trying to place labels on people. The rich, skinny girls are viewed as snobs. People who don't fit in with society are weird and always outcasts. And the evil characters are always madmen. Maybe we shouldn't interpret it like that.
That's very deep.
I know.
Oh, okay.
You write poetry?
Go ahead, Isaac. What were you saying?
If people are like saying, "Hey, we're all playing this popular game like Fortnite and Apex Battle Royale,"
Oh no.
Yeah.
you know, those kind of games.
No, it's
like
good
Madden
example.
was-
Typical gamer view.
Madden Battlegrounds. If you just want to play your truck game, play your truck game.
Oh,
It's fine.
That's what I'm saying. Spin Tires, good game. Go buy Spin Tires on Steam right now.
Mud Runner though.
John, edit that out.
Okay.
Don't edit it out.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna edit it out
No.
and not do that.
Only edit me out saying that it's a good game and we should buy it.
Okay.
Isaac's thing was good. Don't edit that out.
That's
Yeah,
good.
don't edit that
The
out.
game's also like super laggy. Okay,
That's
so
because it's a stream.
I mean,
I
so
think
staying authentic to
this is-
yourself. Oh, go ahead, Betty.
trying to talk?
I think this is the point where we like question, ourselves.
This is gonna be fucking chock full of jump cuts.
So chock full. The game's so laggy it already looks like jump
This
cuts,
is
so
all
it doesn't
gone.
matter.
This is all gone already.
So, the question I would ask is, what are some obstacles to staying authentic?
Well, like I said earlier, society's labels. It's just always a negative effect on people. And it's not a healthy percussion that we should all submit to.
You know, we live in a society where if
Very
you
true.
wanna play video games for a living, your parents are gonna say, "Get off the couch, you loser. Go get a job."
So true.
But, so that could keep someone from wanting to play them Overwatches for monies, you know? On the
Very
Disney
true.
XD.
Or like truck games.
Yeah, or truck games. I mean,
Or truck games, yeah. Do what you love. Peace and love, baby. Logic.
Yeah, I agree with John here on this point where the society's labels and those labels definitely can lead to harassment and bullying.
So true.
That's obviously an issue here.
It's a pretty big foundation for society.
Very true.
I think Ricky made a good point with like the parents and stuff, because if parents don't accept you, you feel like way less inclined to go for what you like, because your parents
Yeah.
are your biggest role models.
Maybe that's an extension of
It's
our
definitely an
You just should've
extension.
listened to your
society.
parents.
And you can also connect this to some things that were in the book where he said, like, how he got in trouble but he didn't care
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
those people have different views.
Which kind of had to do with like how he was raised, because I know if I told my mom, "Oh, I want to be a writer," she'd kind of be like, "No, like you won't succeed," you know.
It like,
You
kind of
get
makes me think of
money.
my. Oh, you can talk, John. I'll keep my example.
I had nothing interesting to say. Go ahead.
Okay, so in the '80s, when my dad was choosing his instrument for band, he wanted to play the drums, but he heard my grandpa say, "Man, I hate the drums. Those really suck." So that really influenced the choice that could have made a difference in his life. So instead of playing the drums like he wanted to, he started playing the saxophone, and so he didn't do something he could have liked like later on. Well, he plays drums now, but he could have done it beforehand and had more fun.
And been better,
You know?
yeah. You could have bettered
Yeah,
yourself.
That was
yeah,
beautiful.
So I guess we can all agree that parents and more authoritative figures telling us what we should and shouldn't do definitely affects whether or not we're authentic and true to ourselves.
Yeah, big
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
People we really look up to and idolize.
My mom hates trucks games, but I still play them.
I have an example from the book I'd like to
Oh, yeah, bring in the
down.
book. That's a good, great
Um,
the
enhancer.
book.
You know, I really read over the book. Thank you. So basically,
The book is On Writing by Stephen King, for anyone who doesn't know.
oh yes, on writing. We forgot to
What a
mention.
nerd.
It's about Steve
but
himself.
when Stephen King was growing up, and he really got an interest in journalism, writing little articles for the paper, he'd always get letters back from the people at the newspaper that he idolized, basically the editors of the newspaper, that he saw as divine. So he would always read their criticism, and every rejection letter he got, he would nail on the wall. Because usually they were all the same. They would all have the same, like, sorry, we weren't interested. But he kept all the ones that really provided actual criticism, saying, hey, make sure you summarize this. We don't need, like, your first rough draft. We only need the second one because that's, like, your best ones. He really
Wow.
only took criticism from the people that actually provided him with information rather than the rejections and the negative influences.
Right. And there's definitely a difference between constructive criticism and like conforming to an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Something we definitely need to take into account, especially with this book.
Yes.
I would know since I've read it.
Mm-hmm. So basically, the big point I was trying to get at there is that even though he idolized some of these people, Stephen King was able to. Stephen King was able to only take criticism from the ones that provided him such. So, um,
And he
some
was also,
people,
his mom also didn't like discourage him from writing. He never had anyone in his life who really discouraged him from doing what he loved.
I would like to discourage. I disagree with that because when he got in trouble in elementary school and high school for some of the books he wrote and things he wrote, like his fake news that he had, he got in trouble for that severely, and
You're right.
that was a negative, like, hey, and also, like I brought up earlier, the letters people send him and the harassment he gets for writing some of the sensitive topics and controversial topics in his books, such as racism and sexism, and some of the dark topics he talks about really bring up a lot of hate from other people, but he hasn't listened to them, thank God.
Yeah, but do you think at that point he's already created and developed like this sense of like confidence in himself that make him not want to listen to those people?
Well, in high school and elementary school, which were very sensitive times for Stephen King growing up due to the fact he lives in poverty and he had issues with his mom, you could see that he was still not himself. He was always following his brother, as stated in the book. He would always, like, let his brother influence him to do things he probably shouldn't, such as the poison ivy incident and the electric socket incident where he blew out a whole building with his brother. So maybe the influences in his life, the positive. Sorry. I'm back. Anyway, maybe his mom and people that he really trusted to influence him helped carry on that sense of himself, authenticity.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Just gonna say for sure a bunch. Does anyone know what time we
You
started
know?
recording?
Like 10?
Oh, I
Around
see the
the
recording.
time.
Okay, there's a
We started
recording time in
recording
the
at
bottom right.
8:05.
So we're 10 minutes in
Oh my god.
to this
Oh,
take at
cool. My finishing the level got into.
Are there any more questions?
least. Yeah. So that's another thing I would like to bring up is what do you guys think? A lot of the pros for being authentic are like, do you think that success is like directly derived from being authentic?
No.
No.
It depends. I mean, your business, if you're a business dude, you could like lie and cheat, sell some dudes some fake drugs to do stuff online and make a bunch of money. So I guess you couldn't, but you could be like yourself, like Elon Musk, and just become successful too. So, like anything, like I've been saying this whole time, it really depends on the circumstances, and you can't really categorize anything.
That's a
I
good
mean,
Exactly. It's really
like on the topic that I think it's like necessary to sometimes play the roles that are socially required of us to get the job done or fit in with the situation.
you also have to be really smart. And you also have to go by your own degree of what success is, your own opinion of what success is. Success is different for everyone.
That's
Yes.
true. If
So-
you're searching,
Go ahead. No.
if you're searching for like personal happiness, then being true to yourself is probably very valid and something that you should strive for. But if you're like working in a job and you consider money to be success, well, most businesses are bureaucracies; they're impersonal. So being yourself isn't always the best idea. Usually, you should strive to be more what they think of you as if you want to be successful in that sense. But personally, I think happiness is more important.
Yeah.
But
and
it's
a
not
lot-
always about being authentic to yourself because it is very important to conform in a lot of situations. I think is what we're getting at here.
Yes.
Yeah. But then
Um.
we have people like Stephen King who not only was he himself and he did things for happiness, he also, through doing what he loved, made a lot of money. And those are kind of like the circumstances that you see only once every like hundred or so people. So
And even sometimes with Stephen King, he had interviews with news reporters, and he would still stay authentic through the news reportings because they would ask him questions like, "What gave you the idea? Like, how do you write?" And he said one word at a time.
Yeah, I think it's very lucky to be both personal in your workspace and also alone. Most jobs don't offer that sort of ideas, so it's very lucky to be able to be yourself while you work.
I mean, I know this doesn't really have.
that's what makes so many 13-year-old girls say, "I want to be a writer when I grow up." Because
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know this doesn't really have anything to do with the main question that's going on right now, but I was gonna talk about in my video like how Stephen King uses his instincts to do things. Like Penny talked about the interviews where he just says he kind of came up with it. It's kind of how I think of like cooking for me. Like my dad does it. He kind of taught me a little bit, but I've really been doing my own stuff and things and learning from other people. Like just using my instincts to do what I know. So I guess that's a way to stay authentic. Just trust your instincts.
Yeah, and I could agree with that. That sounds like, I believe everyone does things by instinct, even judging people by instinct.
Well, some people don't do things by instinct, like the major conformers, people who conform in almost every aspect of their life just so they can get by. I feel like
Yeah.
they probably don't do things on instinct. They think about it, and they think like, what would, like maybe say my boss. What would my boss do? Because
what would Jesus do?
or what would Jesus
Exactly.
do? Stuff
Well,
like
I
that.
think it's just human nature to, pick up on things and just
Especially when
naturally
you-
assume something out of somebody.
Which just goes back to the whole society topic
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
of how society
Yeah,
kind of
the
has
one we live in.
making people think and certain things.
Society changes a lot, and I can see how. Do you think that would bring up a lot of problems nowadays with authenticity? and people assuming things about certain people?
I don't really know. I mean, the old geezers that like stereotype everything and do all the bad stuff that like go against authenticity are on their way out, or they're gonna become senile in a couple of years. They'll be gone, and hopefully we can have a fresh slate with all these new young creative people trying to make a better world.
I
So I
think
hope that kind of happens.
I think we live in a very PC culture, and so people are going to become way more socially acceptable as time goes on. So I think the changes in society at the time, or right now, are actually helping authenticity grow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think our jobs are like becoming more social. It's less about like manufacturing and more about like marketing and such. So maybe that will also benefit it.
Yeah,
Matthew,
for sure.
you said that our culture is being more accepted and being more acceptive of authenticity and stuff. What do you think would be some obstacles that could possibly prevent authenticity from, spreading and everyone becoming authentic?
Well, I mean, like Ricky said, all the older members in society are still
Geezers.
accustomed to their old ways and aren't really as accepting as the new ways.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like
And
to.
obviously, this isn't true for most, not, I get the idea, there's certain generic groups of old people, but not all.
Well, of course, not all old people, but the
Yeah.
stereotype, which means the majority,
The southern type.
is
The
that
outspoken ones.
the outspoken ones. That's a good way to put it too. But they are the ones that are like, oh, stop being authentic. Like, being gay is bad and stuff. Like,
I do have
They're
to
right
disagree.
though.
yeah, that's good. Cut out. Cut that out. Cut.
PC, your mom.
Okay, put a
Listen, John.
timestamp in,
John,
and
I
can
wrote.
cut that
I
out.
wrote like a Oh yeah, I'll put a timestamp.
I'll put a yo mama joke in there.
It's about 17 minutes. Let me put that down somewhere.
With the whole old people will die out and will slowly become more authentic, because I think we're dismissing kind of a big thing in society that helps society move along and kind of sets like a foundation for a lot of people's moral beliefs, and that is religion. Specifically where we live, Christianity. And I think that's something that we need to take into account, is that it's because older people are dying and they have different viewpoints than we do. That doesn't mean that like 1,000, 2,000-year-old system is going to
So-
die with them.
To sum up what you're saying, basically, you're saying that religion influences a lot of opinions people have.
I do.
I have an actual perspective from all of this religion. I've been to two churches in my life, the Catholic Church and the Baptist Church. Baptist Church is the more recent. The Catholic Church is very set in their ways, ritualistic. Let's do the same thing every Sunday. And let's have the father make a joke about the Texans and the Cowboys. Say, ha, football. But the Baptists are way different. They can look forward thinking and new and hip with all their cool music and fun get-togethers for teenagers, but it's really just a big trap to get you into the way of their thinking, which I've really just realized. Because
So, Ricky,
The-
do you think that that's their way of conforming to society?
I think it's their way of getting the youth to conform to their own form of society. I'm just now realizing this.
All right,
Because-
let's not talk about religion so
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
Okay,
Dark topic.
Let's
It's
lay
good
off the
because
religion a
it's-
little
People
bit
don't
because
like
that's a little
okay.
illegal.
Touching? Yeah.
We can't
I'll stop
push
talking.
religious ideals in school.
Y'all live in
I'll stop touching on my.
These fucking Baptists.
The church is ruining me.
What? No.
Pizza on Wednesday nights is just conforming me to
What?
Christian.
No, it was.
Can we-
I was
can we
just gonna
get-
say that they're
Can we
very.
get back to the gays? Because I
persuasive.
put gays in like a really bad essay and it got me like a really high grade, and I think it's just
Really?
because she was scared to fail me because I put
Yeah, I
gay.
think it's a sensitive topic. So
Because,
you
like-
talk
Let's
about
go,
gay
guys.
people.
Because
Okay, come on, let's go.
this
let's go.
girl who had like a
Your
way better essay had
sexuality.
a C, and I was just like, yeah, I just mentioned gay people, so I think I got a good grade.
So
So
I
cut all
noticed
this
on your
out so she doesn't see
brainstorm
this.
a topic that I think is quite interesting. Your mom?
Oh yeah. I like how
I
that
already
was a
mentioned
follow.
that.
That was good.
Me and Bella said we were gonna just randomly
That's gonna
mention
go
it.
on like right at the end. I'm gonna put
Oh,
that right at the end.
Oh,
That's fine.
For
Your
real?
mom?
but for real?
Mom.
I do want to expand on something
Yum.
that John.
Okay.
For real, I do want to expand on something that John said. Is that jobs are getting all more social. I think that has to do a lot with people like a lot more freelance jobs. Now megacorps are like the highest that they've ever been, like Amazon, Google. But like there's a lot more like software freelancers and like artists and like just writers in general than there ever has
Fucking
been.
gamers.
And indie development, like indie development
yeah.
is huge right now.
True.
Mhm. Especially, yeah.
I'm gonna say that again, so you have a clean cut where Isaac's not saying the F word under it. And indie developers are huge right now. Like, they're dominating the game market right now.
Especially
indie
companies that get
developers-
like screwed over by their publishers because
Yeah.
they make the exact same game but like over again, like Mudrunner Spin Tires. They got screwed over by their publisher in the first Spin Tires, so they didn't.
Anyways,
No, no,
with
no,
indie developers, it's a lot more personal. Like you're buying a product from a single person most of the time, so you kind of like feel that connection and you understand like the tone of the games. So
Exactly.
A
Yeah.
better example is Bungie. You guys all know who Bungie is, right? They
Yeah,
the
creator of Halo.
Yeah, they made Halo, and then they left Microsoft and they joined with Activision. And Activision basically controlled all of Destiny for the past 5 years. They've just now gotten out, and now they're actually embracing their whole culture and doing stuff for the gamers that they've wanted for the past 5 years.
Yes,
'Cause
there's
they
definitely
promised to.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
there's definitely a huge shift from Activision Destiny to Bungie Destiny, and
Yeah.
it's a positive shift. It shows that being authentic can, and in most cases does, prove to be like a successful way to do your job.
yeah.
So then, I'd like to pose a question. Do you think that in order to be authentic and be successful in being authentic, you have to first have some sort of position of power? Because what it sounds like to me is that they got really big and
I
they were
would
able to be in a position where they could leave and actually do and have
Well,
the resources.
So Bungie actually didn't start off under Activision, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they were under Microsoft for a while. Then they left, and they needed
But
a guy to help fund them.
Under Microsoft, they were just funded by Microsoft. They were
They
allowed
had creative freedom.
They had creative freedom. And so they got big by themselves. They just needed funding. And so they went to Activision, who then controlled them and kind of lessened the brand. And when
Yeah.
they got out of it and became way more authentic, the brand became great again.
Yeah, so basically, I'd like to compare Bungie and Activision to like a boss and a worker in an office place. Bungie was this creative kid coming out of college. He just wrote a great paper about something, and he gets put in office. And Activision's like, "Hey, we want you to do this. Work with the plan. Do what we want. Do the same stuff, but we're gonna change it a little bit." And so basically, the big boss takes over their idea and makes it not as good, and makes it to make more money for a profit. So that's basically what happened.
To get
Okay.
off the topic of gaming,
thank you.
I would like to bring this into more of a familiar subject to some people that may be listening to this. I would like to bring it to social media and celebrities. I know, right?
Like
Okay.
King Batch funny.
Okay, please stop.
Okay.
Cut the King Batch part.
My favorite social member, Jerry Perp Drink.
We should have like a blooper reel at the end.
Like King Batch.
It's all gonna be super racist stuff.
Well, we don't have to turn the blooper reel in.
Oh my goodness.
Nyaga.
Oh yeah, I did.
Cut.
Yeah.
Cut.
Could I bring my point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Penny, go ahead and talk.
It's a good
Ooh,
point.
pumpkin. I'm gonna crush it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Anyway, there's a lot of really famous people nowadays that are having other people and companies that endorse them and give them power, basically. Like controlling their accounts and controlling what represents who they are. And a lot of customers and the fan base, a lot of people that support these people, they see a big difference, like you suggested with your gaming, how they're actually embracing themselves and like showing things that people had wanted for a while. A lot of, I think, in social jobs, a lot of people will lose control of who they are with the more power they gain and become less and less authentic and will conform to what the people with power want them to do. Would
Yeah, it
anyone agree on this?
becomes less about their genuine identity, which they started with, and more into what they think they have created in terms of an identity, and they'll just like work to sort of go off of that
Or in
and
what,
infuse into a business.
So
or
let's
like
circle
in
back.
what like they think the customer wants, because they're trying to
Yeah.
conform to what the customer wants to sell more. Or in social media, they're trying to conform to the viewers so that they can get more.
And what's amazing is Stephen King happens to be like a great counter example to this, because he does not let anyone criticize his writing. When he's in the new stages of it, he reads it to himself. He is his own criticizer.
Until
And,
he gets to his intended reader.
and yeah, his intended reader. He lets his intended reader read it, which he only lets his intended reader read it, which is
Which is
like
always
his
his
wife.
wife.
His wife. He said he has a really strong connection with his wife, and that he sees her as the ideal intended reader.
Yeah. So I think something he stresses a lot in his book is don't write for anyone but yourself. Don't care if anyone else thinks it's good.
He really is against conforming to what other people want.
And so let's circle back around to the main question, which is how does one form an identity that remains true and authentic for him and herself? So in this social media driven job, social influencer type of world, what could someone do to stay authentic? And do you think it would work when there are so many people who want to see one certain thing from one certain person?
Well, I mean, like, I don't mean to take it back to gaming, but that's kind of all the examples I know. Is on like YouTube. So we're talking about social media. So I'll bring it to YouTube. On YouTube, when Fortnite came out, Fortnite was huge, and everyone was playing Fortnite. And if you weren't playing Fortnite, you weren't getting views.
Yeah.
Except
we love
for the
Fortnite, we
small
love
amount
Fortnite.
of channels
Spin tires.
who record their own
Keys for
things,
DKs.
Ninja.
such as Keys 4DKs, a great channel. You should go
God.
subscribe.
Cut that
But-
out, John. Cut that out.
Certain channels keep their authenticity by doing something other than Fortnite. And they may not get as many views, but they get a more personal fan base who will be more likely to stay after Fortnite dies. Because when Fortnite died, all those channels that only played Fortnite started dying too.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone has a non-gaming example, they can bring it up.
Okay, but then I'd like to mention something, right? Well, this all circles around back to the idea if they gain success from actually being authentic, or did they all just nonetheless perish into forgetfulness?
I think it really goes back to being circumstantial.
Yeah, well, I mean, all of this is circumstantial.
So what you're saying is people with a identity and are more interesting like themselves comparative to what they're putting out and what they're creating, substance wise. It's much more interesting to see a genuine person rather than a fake one.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. I think we could all agree on that.
I have a quote from the book, I think, that helps really represent that. Here on page 158, Stephen King says, what are you going to write about? And the big answer is anything you damn well want, anything at all, as long as you tell the truth. And that really has to do with being authentic, I believe, and definitely being an interesting person, because the more honest and true to yourself you are, the more interesting you come off to other people.
You know,
I
I've
think
kind
it's
of.
interesting. Oh,
No, you go, Bill. I'm probably gonna destroy the whole conversation with my thought. So finish it.
okay. So I was going to say that I think it's interesting that a lot of people say, oh yeah, I want an authentic person. I want someone who's going to be authentic and present themselves as like who they are and be interesting. But what we fail to kind of recognize is that if someone were to be their real authentic self in a society when not a lot of people are, we tend to judge them for it a lot more than we really realize, because our brains are kind of hardwired that way. I don't know if you guys were thinking
No,
about that.
That makes
but
total sense. I would totally agree with that.
I would definitely agree as well.
Ricky, what was the point you were going to bring up?
I was thinking, so we're talking about like we're assuming young people are trying to be authentic. What if like a middle-aged
true.
man comes like and he stops conforming to society and he starts finding himself? What if he finds out that he's actually a terrible person? Like because in Breaking Bad that happens. The main man Walter White spent so long forming being a chemistry teacher when he could have gone for the stars and been the greatest chemist ever. And he starts selling meth instead of teaching kids, and he stops conforming. And him selling meth, him being a drug lord, kingpin, is who he is. What if
So
that
true.
is
Okay,
the
but is
case?
selling meth so bad?
Is it so
Cut,
bad?
cut that.
Bomb! There was a bomb under the
Don't
desk.
say that. Okay.
You guys get what I'm getting at, right?
No.
Yes,
I totally
I
understand what you're getting at. I think this ties it back to it being circumstantial. I mean, when he's selling drugs, he is getting personal happiness, which is what authenticity brings you. But sometimes getting personal happiness for yourself ruins the life of others, such as like I've never seen the show, but if a drug lord like that was to go to jail, it would put an immense amount of stress on his family because they see like, oh, my son or husband or whatever is in jail now, and this is like bad on me. So he may have lived a better life, but at what cost?
The cost was he died. And
Sure.
spoilers,
Well,
sorry.
don't spoil it, but yeah.
Yeah, you would just don't cut that out, John.
Cut,
It's
cut!
our show.
Cut out
Yeah.
the Breaking Bad ending.
I get what you're trying to say. We should strive to be who we are and
But also
live who
be
we
careful with your
live how we
actions.
want to live, but also under,
Yeah.
all fairness between everybody.
A lot of I'd like to bring this up as a point as well while we're on the topic. A lot of choices we make and who we decide to be as a person, I believe, are really influenced by the way we grew up and what culture we grew up with. Because some things that Stephen King grew up with, a lot of us today would not have grown up with, such as, drive-in movie theaters. We don't go see a lot of drive-in movies
Man,
nowadays.
speak for yourself.
I love those.
Those are
Okay.
pretty fun.
I've never
Those are
seen
cool.
one, so
See,
So fun.
I would be definitely an example of that, I guess.
Loser.
But no, I
What's that
totally
about?
understand what you're talking about. Culture is a huge impact on authenticity.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I think we should honestly just send in the raw cut of this instead.
There's a
No.
couple bad words
No.
and me
No,
yelling.
I
Yeah.
said there was a bomb under the desk.
The part, Bella, where you said meth isn't that bad.
Oh, yeah.
It would be so great.
And when I talked about Miss Muchler being too scared to give me a low grade because I said gay,
Oh yeah, that
Oh,
was,
yeah.
that was always a.
that might not be good to leave in.
I'm gonna be really
Okay,
scared in this.
I would like to say though, we are at 33 minutes. I don't know how much of this is
Okay.
unusable because we
Let's
did.
start the
A lot.
outro
I
music.
feel like
Cut a lot.
75% of it is unusable.
We should go over.
I don't
we
know
should go
about.
over the time.
Minutes.
I think we should just record for an hour.
Yeah.
Do I need to send you some
So
like
I can
footage
trim it.
of this game
And
so
then
you don't have to
John
do
can-
the shitty B-roll that Matt's streaming?
I'm just gonna show like the gameplay whenever you talk about Truck Simulator.
Don't.
No.
Show it
I
the
will.
entire time.
Show it the
part where I
entire
say
time.
I'm squishing pumpkins. Okay.
I'm doing a video recording, not an audio recording.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so I can use
it's
that
gonna
video.
Look like
So
that.
yeah, it's gonna be really bad though because it's lagging like every half a second.
I can
When
send
we're
some
having a
B-roll.
really serious conversation, could someone just burp, please?
Queef.
I get fart.
You're welcome.
Me when I queef into the
Okay,
mic.
we should get back on
I'm sorry,
topic.
Ricky.
So what should we start talking about right now?
I'm sorry, Ricky. I muted you like a long time ago. I thought it was
Oh
really
yeah.
cool.
What?
Let's talk a little bit about.
Okay, let's do authenticity in leadership, right?
Ooh, good one.
People again?
Okay, so like,
Let's talk about
We can't serve people.
for example,
You can't.
So leaders are generally scrutinized by their coworkers and their customers, and it's kind of hard to maintain authenticity in that way.
Or
But-
like even I don't mean to cut you off. I would just like to say, or even bigger leaders than just bosses, but like the president.
Not
Even
mine.
he
I
feels the
agree.
pressure to like conform at some point.
the boss baby.
All right, but like on the other hand, right? Being authentic.
Cut that.
Start over, Jeremy.
Okay. But on the other hand, right? Okay.
Stop.
Ricky,
This is all unusable now.
I need some out.
this has been tarnished.
I think
Anyway.
there's something
I'm sorry, David.
to add some authenticity to it.
Anyways, but like, being a down-to-earth leader, right, would develop a stronger trust between your consumer base and your coworkers. Take for example, Reggie Fils-Aimé, right?
Mhm.
He's smart about things he says, right? But he also truly believes in the things he says, and that's why he has like such a positive relationship um, with the consumer base.
Yeah, rest in peace.
And for everyone who is listening that
Oh.
doesn't know who we're talking about, would you mind giving a brief?
Yeah. Reggie Fils-Aimé was the former president of Nintendo North America.
Yeah,
And-
he passed away in a car accident like a year ago.
Yeah.
He's playing,
Bowser
uh,
owns it now.
Rest in peace.
He's playing Mario Kart in heaven.
he's playing Animal Crossing New Leaf on his Nintendo 3DS.
I
Pay
can't
hundreds
wait
of
to play
dollars for the
Animal
new
Crossing
Mario
in-
game.
in heaven.
Wait, did he actually die?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, you did.
John's gonna edit so it sounds like he did.
Oh,
He
No
did.
one in the class is gonna know.
Wait,
that
did he
did
actually
that.
die? And then it'll be, yeah, he did.
Guys, this podcast is so not authentic.
Okay, yeah, no, this
Yeah, no, there's
podcast
gonna be
is
a million
awful.
jump cuts. The
We're
teacher-
talking about being
like,
ourselves and then we're faking it for this.
Should we talk about that?
What, faking yourselves?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like,
It'd be fun
let
to-
me-
Oh, true.
A
That'd be
good
meta.
example of conforming to society right now is, I would believe this podcast. We are definitely.
Don't even pretend like you made that shit up. Make Matt say it.
Stop. Yeah, let me say it. Let me say it. So, I don't know if I speak for everyone here when I say this, but I feel like a good example of conforming would actually be this podcast, because a lot of us use swears in our daily vocabulary, and I mean, it just happens. It's being a
influenced
teenager.
by our gamer culture.
I'd like
Yeah,
to expand on it and say I could give less of a shit about the podcast. I'm just
Oh.
punishment.
Okay, we're gonna leave that in to bleep it,
Yeah,
so that
yeah,
it like
yeah.
looks cool. But cut that out.
This is gonna be awful. I won't be able to cut any of this shit like well.
That's fine. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think this podcast should be named the least but most authentic podcast.
It's so meta.
Because
So
because
We have to
I'm
redo the
putting
intro.
on a persona just to get a higher grade, because we have to conform to society in order to do what, say, our teacher, who shall not be named, for this is actually going on YouTube. I said who shall not be named.
Bridge in high school.
But stop it. But yeah,
I'm gonna bleep that out.
no, leave that in. Leave the
Wait,
joke
we have
in
the
where we
intro.
all laugh.
We all
'cause
say what
that's good.
schools we're.
Okay.
But yeah, so
Let's redo the intro though.
do you want to?
Yeah, after that, redo the intro.
Focus.
We can do
Let's
it
just
later.
not say our school. Yeah.
Let's do it later.
But
Focus.
I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of us, because I speak to you guys on almost a daily basis, I feel like a lot of us are putting on a persona in order to like conform and get a better grade on this podcast, which is just like a big example of why a lot of times people just conform. Because if we were being ourselves, we would be scared to get a low grade.
Exactly.
I'd like to chime in and say it's not my grade because I'm not a part of this project. So I also care less about the podcast.
Listen up, buddy.
Okay,
Listen up,
conservative.
bucko.
I
Liberal.
can definitely relate to that in school.
Dangerous
And,
water level.
I guess.
I don't really know what to do here.
Professional areas where you have to put on a more what you think is a censored personality in order for people to accept you and see you as more professional and serious.
Yeah. Well, businesses are impersonal, and this is in a way sort of functioning like a business. Speaking of which, Mrs. Teacher, give me a good grade.
Wink, wink.
Leave
No.
that in.
She
Put
can't
that
see our
in.
wink, so we have to say it out loud.
There's so much angst in this fucking podcast. Like
Yeah, it's just so much sexual
it's like
tension.
it's like 2008 punk
There's
subculture,
so
you know?
much
I
I'm just
Oh.
glad
Believe it
I'm
in.
not the only girl
Believe
for
it in.
once.
Oh yeah.
It's all between Bella and John.
Yeah.
Who left?
Bella left.
She left in fear.
And she's muted.
She
Make
muted
me
herself.
The only girl.
Your little nuts are gonna start quaking,
Your little
buddy.
nuts are gonna start quaking.
okay.
I'm gonna accidentally leave one of these in on accident.
Okay.
Okay, I found this
Let us
one
all watch
topic.
it first before you.
I'm looking at the rubric right now, and we're definitely missing this one subject, Matthew.
Okay, so let's bring it up.
Uh,
On the topic of conforming, we have to conform and bring this up. So bring it up.
we have to conform to the rubric. So,
Yeah.
on the
You can just
rubric
cut
it
it out.
says analysis,
Don't cut
and it says we have to show reflection over our book. So, is there anything that you saw in the book that really made you think about our pressing question here?
Definitely, what we've been saying, or what you have brought up multiple times, where he takes the negative influence, or the negative comments from people, but he only takes the ones that are, like, well done, I should say. People he respects.
Criticism.
I usually take criticism from everyone, but after reading the book, I might start to think more of it like, I should only take criticism from people I respect. Because some random kid can come up to me and say, like, oh, you're the worst thing ever, and that would hurt my feelings. But if John would say it, I would be like, okay, what can I do to improve? And I
Yeah.
feel like when something comes from someone you respect, it feels way better.
I like to.
And I say it a lot.
I'd like to say something about that. If someone that you don't know gives like good criticism, like I mean, they're not saying you suck. They're saying like, hey, maybe you should like talk, like I don't know, just like something that's good, you know.
Mhm.
Like maybe then you should actually take into account, even though you don't know them.
Perhaps.
Just to relate. This
Well, I
back
mean,
to the
if you do
book.
that, I feel like you're cherry picking. And
Well, I mean, no, it's. I mean, criticism comes at different levels. Not all of it's just, oh, you suck. You should really take more into account, even if it's not from someone that you know.
There's a difference.
oh, you're saying like if they go more in depth.
I do
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I could agree with that.
Mhm.
Penny, were you trying to say something?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so-
found even just on the first freaking page of the book, Stephen King writes this whole page about how his book is going to be different from other people's books because they write, they don't know what they're doing, and they just present it to a company. And do you mind if I read it, actually?
I do not.
Okay, this is a short book. Stephen King says on one of his first pages titled Second Board, this is a short book because most books are about writing are filled with bullshit. Fiction writers, present company included, don't understand very much about what they do, nor why it works and when it's good, why it doesn't when it's bad. I figured the shorter book, the less than the bullshit, then the less the bullshit, sorry. And that's, I think, all that really needs to be said from that page.
No,
So it
I mean,
says right away it's going to be.
Yeah, right away it says that he's being very truthful about writing with this book.
Very real.
Mm-hmm.
So then, do you think? Okay, so here's my dilemma with this: is that yes, he was very successful doing what he was doing, and he's writing this book saying you need to be authentic when you're writing, and you need to do it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think a book like this, where it was like, oh, this is no bullshit, this is all my tips on writing, would be as successful if his books prior were not as successful as they were? Because the way I see it is that in order to be authentic and have society accept you, you first have to conform and rise to a position of power where that is okay.
so I agree with you that if his prior books hadn't done so well, this book would have probably been completely forgotten and not sold a single copy. But I will disagree with you on that you have to conform at the beginning. Because as we said, Stephen King didn't conform in the beginning. He just needed a kind of he needed a reputation to publish something about what he does. And I think that is in any field is if you're going to talk about your job, you should have some experience in it.
Exactly, but that's the thing. Like, in order to be in,
Hello.
is how I did it.
You
blah,
cut
blah,
out.
blah.
Please re-say that.
Yeah.
Okay, so in order to be in a position where you can give advice on how you made something happen, and where you can be authentic and say, "This is like my life." Like he said, he talks in the very end about like the hypothetical writer who the only reason they got their first book published was because when they sent out a letter, they had like these credits from all these magazines that they got published in. Doesn't like I don't know what page it's on, but I know it's towards the end when he talks about like the hypothetical writer Frank.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like I feel like there's some kind of for just any job, any profession, there's or anything at all really, there's some kind of like level that you have to get to in order for you to really be able to do what you want. You have to have the resources, the money, the credits, whatever.
So
do.
you have to be comfortable, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
So are we still talking about what we got from the book, like in general?
Yes, reflection. Yes, Ricky.
Okay, so
That's it.
basically, out of the whole book, I really just related to Stephen King. Because I'm kind of in poverty, but because my dad makes bad money decisions a lot. No, I don't live in at all. And oh no, get him out, get him out.
He's muted.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm kind of
Sure,
in
sir.
poverty. I'm more middle class. I'm not like Stephen King levels. I got a single mom, and I've got an older sister that I used to follow around. So I really relate to him. I also really like the idea of being original, because I hate whenever I copy someone, because I feel like, oh, I just said what they said. That's not funny at all. You know? I just kind of related to
I
him
agree with
out of the
you.
whole book.
Mm-hmm.
And I could definitely see that. I mean, there are a lot of parallels from what I've seen of you and Stephen King in his book on writing.
Right. And I think the beauty of the way Stephen King wrote this book and pretty much every book was the language he uses really appeals to younger people. The way he talks is easy to understand and kind of personable.
Yeah, with the swearing, you don't see swearing in a lot of like personal settings, and so it makes you feel more like you're having a one-on-one conversation with him, and not like he is telling you how to do your job. He's giving you feedback and criticism.
I'd like a wax go.
And I feel like the language in the book really just elevates it to the next level.
Go.
Okay. I believe that. I don't think. Are we coming towards an end here, Matthew?
Let me check.
Okay,
our
before we
time.
come towards the end, I'd like to
We're
go
sitting
back
at
onto the topic of
48
religion.
minutes, so I think we're looking for an hour, so let's hit another 12 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we got German here. German.
All right, so the nonconformist movement during against the Church of England, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Pretty cool stuff. Protestants did not like the Church of England. They pushed for religious liberty. Fuck, where was it going with this? Cut.
You just said the F word, dude.
Cut,
You don't
cut,
understand.
cut.
Cut it out. Cut it out.
This
Nice
sucks.
try, German. Nice try.
You're gonna have to cut like saying cut like.
Yeah,
40
I lost my train of thought.
So
Keep it
You're
all.
a train of love.
Keep all of
yeah,
those
we've
cuts.
talked a lot about certain like a lot of different examples from our personal lives and from the book, and from various examples of gaming here as we see.
Well,
As we all see.
I know you
We
guys
do
are
have the
making fun of
gaming
it,
grandpa.
but we are all. I don't want to say this because it's gonna come out bad, but we are all kind of
We're
gamers.
Yeah, I
And
was
so,
making fun
talking
of it.
about
I'm a
gaming
gamer.
examples is our way of being authentic.
Mhm.
I actually do have a channel called The Gaming Grandpa. If you guys want to subscribe to that.
Go subscribe to the Gaming Grandpa real quick.
Fullmetal Cthulhu.
Yeah, I'm just gonna cut the whole thing to where
That
it's
came
just
off too
clips of
real.
him stating like different channels.
It's just 3 seconds of me saying Gaming Grandpa.
Yeah.
30 minutes of Johnson Gaming Grandpa. Just edit that and turn it in.
Gaming Grandpa. That'd be epic.
And then just loop that.
You gotta play
so
10 minutes of that.
we have around 10 minutes left, I think.
All right.
Around.
Yeah, around 10 minutes left. And I believe it would take us that long to maybe agree on a certain conclusion of our pressing topic here.
Come to a consensus.
Well, I feel like we're all agreeing in the fact that being authentic is only good in certain scenarios.
Yes.
It's a bit of
Yeah,
a
but
gray area.
Just say that and then there. I feel like
Good in majority scenarios, but there are times where it's good to be unauthentic.
I don't even know if I would say majority, honestly.
In more maybe
I think-
social
And
setting.
social, personal.
Social and
setting.
personal. But in a professional setting, it's almost always the right move to conform.
Yeah.
Depending on your like profession.
Yeah, unless your job calls for being authentic, such as
Yeah,
writer
like a
or
comedian. Yeah.
game
Indie
Just,
designer.
Yeah, just like a hypothetical example. Like
Since
if
we're
you
bringing
were
gamers.
if you were a comedian and you were at like a funeral,
Like
you
me.
would obviously not do stand-up comedy at a funeral.
Oh, for sure. Which
Oh, you
then
don't know that.
that would also bring in that sometimes it's good to conform in a social setting.
I'm gonna give that.
But following that sort of analogy with the funeral, if your personality is valid enough, like Larry King, you can start from the beginning and be recognized. So if you're making like really funny jokes and they're like, "Oh wait, that's really funny actually. I don't know if I should laugh or," that would really turn the tide. And that's basically what Larry King is doing. He's making jokes at a funeral.
What?
What is
I don't understand.
What are you on?
I don't know if that was a joke or if you just like.
Can you please
Okay,
go more into depth about
I would
that?
like
No.
to talk about the
Can you leave that
the
in?
professional side of not acting like an idiot.
Leave in our confusion too, so that we don't look dumb.
Yeah.
Can we just play the starting riff of Smoke on the Water for the rest of the
It'll be
podcast?
sound bites of you going, "Yeah."
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright,
So-
cut.
I feel like I have a statement that could close this out. So
Why don't we
basically,
jump?
We're not
when I
looking
was
for a
in-
closer right now. we're
Okay,
we're at 52 minutes.
semi-closer.
We're most likely gonna argue on the closer, so I feel
Okay.
like. It would
Fuck you.
Oh, that's not very nice.
Cut.
Why would you do that, German?
Okay,
Oh,
go ahead,
yeah, wasn't
Ricky.
me- Guys, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
He's typing right now. Of course it was
German. Okay, so basically, when I was in middle school, I did Model UN.
Well,
And I was pretty good at it. Me and my buddy Aaron, we were Norway. Doesn't really matter that it was Norway. Anyway, so I went around and got people to sign our paper. And I acted like a buffoon to do it, so they would conform to my ideas. And I got our thing signed while Aaron was doing the paperwork. So I feel like if you can really make it acting funny and like a buffoon in a professional environment can work. As long as you stick to it and don't deviate and be a professional.
yeah, but it's not always just being a buffoon. There's different
Yeah.
ways you can go about it, like
It's
being funny.
sure, when
at a
it's
funeral.
quiet and you're all working at professional. But
Well-
other than that,
I believe it works because humanity is healed a lot by humor. In
Yeah,
dark
laughter is the
times.
best medicine.
Yeah, like laughter is the best medicine. And
I think the answer. Sorry, company.
Bella,
Cut.
Huh?
Cut.
Cut.
hey, just keep going.
Bella, go.
Let's keep it to awkward silence.
Wait, no,
I
just
think-
like take a sound clip of silence and then loop it like 6 times. So
Like
it
a
seems
minute
like
of
way
silence
longer.
for 6 minutes.
Wait, can we create some silence right now?
Yeah, alright.
yeah.
Mute Bella. She's
No,
got, like-
the Bella ambience makes it so much better.
yeah.
Wait, let's get a little bit more of that.
Yeah,
Actually.
yeah, I want some of that ambient.
I want that ambience. Like at least 10 seconds. Bitch.
Alright, cut.
I
Hey.
was like the fade, like breathing
So,
of German into his microphone. I was adding a lot. I was gonna say it because he would have stopped, but
Okay, I'm gonna say one last thing, then I'm done talking because I've done way too much talking for y'all's podcast. So,
And we thank you a lot,
basically,
Ricky.
yeah.
Yes.
So
Ricky, we love
basically,
you.
to make any buffoonery work in a professional environment, you gotta have a charisma to yourself. Because I sound arrogant whenever I say all this stuff, but I have a sort of charisma to myself. I know I told you to not call me a character, Matthew, but I kind of am. That's
I
how
don't think that's
that's
in
how
the
I
final
work.
cut.
We're on a
Maybe
simulation.
Yeah, we
We're all
truly are.
characters to the
I'm
aliens.
a
That's
charisma tomboy. And so yeah, you gotta have an actual personality to be a buffoon.
And
Hmm.
so
That's all I gotta say.
I think
Or we just have big kahunas.
with stop.
Stop.
I do.
So with not too much time left on
We
our
could have a big
clock
dick,
for right
too.
now,
Not gonna joke.
I feel like maybe we should start with some closing statements.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Everyone, if
well,
you
I
could
think we can
please-
all agree that
Everyone.
What's so
please
funny?
state-
Tell me
It's just
what
the
is
fact
so
that
funny.
everybody is so impersonal right now.
yeah.
Big kahuna.
Everyone could
Edit that
please-
into the podcast. What they do.
Okay.
Yeah,
everyone
no,
write
of
down.
course.
Maybe write down your statements or think about them in your head about what you
Oh, no.
believe your closing statement is, and we'll see if we all agree. We'll state them one by one.
About what specifically?
I'm gonna say
Refer
no.
back
Buying
to the
spin
main-
About
tires.
basically.
Refer
our
back to the main
answer-
question.
Yeah, our answer to
main
the
question
main
now.
question now that we've done our podcast and reflected on Stephen King's novel and personal examples.
Okay.
How long are we gonna take?
I don't know.
Maybe a minute. I don't know.
Are we
I
gonna do the
probably
order
just,
that we
like,
did
think
it
of
intro?
something as we talk. So
I already got mine.
Okay, would anyone like to go?
Go ahead, Isaac.
All right. Okay, sorry. I was reading her message.
All good.
All right, so like basically just really when it comes to like being yourself, like and you're around people you know, just be yourself and don't follow like people in like professional settings and like what they like. And like if you're playing like everyone's playing the new game that's out, like Fortnite Battlegrounds or something. But always like play your own game, especially like Mud Runner Spin Tires.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's a good point. Bella, what would you like to say?
That's gonna get cut.
So what I'd like to say is that when you're forming an identity that remains true and authentic to yourself, I think it's important to have some social awareness and to know when it's okay to be yourself and when it's okay to not be yourself, so that not only can you kind of succeed in a society that unfortunately is on this sort of conformity.
Bella, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to need
You-
you
you-
to read that
Yes,
because your mic is just
you
so
cut out when you said
god
unfortunately.
Because you do live in a society.
She lives in the like jungle where they have no
the
internet.
mighty jungle.
The lion sleeps
awful. George.
She
George.
made a headset out of like copper wires.
Chicken strips.
Chicken
Bella, continue.
Sorry.
Yes, we construct a microphone.
We should keep in the whole closing statement so it shows like our authenticity. I think,
Yeah.
as long as no one swores.
Did I
The whole
swear?
time. Anyways, back to what I was saying. So social awareness on when it's okay to be authentic and when it's not okay to be authentic, I think is really important because we live in a society where, unfortunately, or it's kind of society
Alright.
kind of has this having like a
Please speak
specific.
for you.
Cool. We're gonna move on because your mic's not.
Okay.
Go ahead, German.
Alright, so like I think we can all agree that despite how romanticized authenticity is, right, it is still very much a situational tool in social settings. But for our individual characters, right, it is essential and should be used as a moral compass to express who we truly are.
That's really deep, German. I don't think I have the mind capacity nor vocabulary to state such a thing.
Mental capacity.
Small brain. All right, John.
Okay, so what we've learned is that being true to yourself means having integrity, personal values, sincerity, principles, and generally like living by what is and what is not acceptable to yourself.
Mhm.
And me saying like all those words, that probably made it sound like very awesome to be, you know,
Made you
yourself.
sound like a nerd.
But in reality, like German said, it's very situational. Sometimes you will need to conform, but you should strive for a positive balance between being yourself and being a successful person, and maybe even getting an in between like Larry King.
Talking at jokes at a funeral.
Exactly.
And so my closing statements are probably going to be about the closing statements. And so you could see us being authentic in these closing statements because it's a good way to show you how we perceive authenticity is by being ourselves during the outro or whatever you call it. And so this seems way less professional, and you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, this is bad, boo, 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 you know? As you do. People do that.
Boo, 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 boo.
People do that all the time.
Yeah, I
And
do
so-
that nonstop.
It's a huge contrast, and you probably think the first half is better, but the first half, or probably more than half,
Now I gotta
is-
make the first half better.
is
Yeah, that's
not
right.
authentic. So
John.
if you think that's better, you're saying that authenticity isn't good. And if you say this is better, then you say authenticity is good. And that's all I'm going to say. Big word. Go Penelope.
Yeah. In any case, right? I think we can all agree.
You had
that,
your closing statements.
Blue, it's not your turn!
Yeah, German.
Penelope has Almachet.
It's not your turn.
I
Alright.
don't think
Please,
your name's
shush up.
Penelope German.
Penelope,
German, I don't
go.
think your name's Penelope.
Penelope.
So I believe authenticity, the basic definition is staying true to yourself. And I believe that we should express that in what we do and who we are. But I do believe that we should also take into consideration
Doobie.
some of the rules set by society. Just take into consideration. You don't have to follow them. But if you were to know like what could get you in big trouble, then it would help prevent a lot of maybe bad things happening towards.
Yeah,
For sure.
regardless of what one person might say.
Okay.
it's still
I think it's
You
Ricky's
already
turn.
got closing
Hey, hey!
You already got one. It's my turn.
Go, Ricky.
Ricky's turn, go.
Okay, so to answer Bella's question that she spelled a word wrong in, how does on form an identity that remains true and authentic? So I personally have a set of moral codes.
Let me
I
show
have
that
put in
real
place.
quick on screen.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
big
That's
kahuna.
Matthew showing it on screen.
Don't do that. Come on.
Okay,
Okay, I'll finish up my closing statement.
go ahead.
So I've got my own moral code, which we never talked about. Probably shouldn't talk about because we're finishing it up from the last guy's talk. So I got my own moral code to remain true to myself, and I follow it a lot because that's what a moral code is. So that's how I have formed my identity, at least.
Epic.
Could you share it?
Yes.
Is that all we wanted to say, guys?
Yeah, that's all I
I
wanted to say.
believe that we could wrap up.
YouTube channel.
Also, my uncle Salvador
I'll plug the
died in a
YouTubes in the
watermelon
description.
truck.
We're good. Okay, alright, stop.
Uh,
It's over.
hey,
Bye,
you should
guys.
follow-
Thank
uh,
you.
should
Thank
follow
you.